Thanks for tuning in to Vitality and Motion. Let this be a place to grow your mindset and prioritize movement. All audio is original with music and production support from Riverside as my editing platform. This podcast is for education and inspiration only, and any studies or products I mention are simply for context. Take what fits in your life and check in with your healthcare medical providers as you feel is necessary. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Vitality in Motion. I'm your host Maddie, and today we're going to be discussing all things posture and ergonomics. Now, ergonomics is basically modifying the workspace to make it more comfortable for you, so it's definitely important to be aware of and what your job offers when it comes to this. Now, no one's posture is ever going to be perfect, and I know mine sure isn't, but this is more about bringing awareness to how you sit, stand, or lay on a daily basis and provide some tips, especially if you do experience things like back pain on a daily basis. So to understand and appreciate posture a little bit more, I thought it would be helpful if we discuss some of the anatomy in the spine. Our back has four main sections. We divide it into the cervical or upper neck, thoracic or middle of our back, lumbar or lower back, and sacrococcygeal, or most people consider this the tailbone. We have two main curves in our spine, also known as the lordotic curve and kyphosis curve. Naturally, our cervical or upper neck and lumbar or lower back are typically following the lordotic curve. In our thoracic or middle back and sacrococcygeal region follow the kyphosis curve. Think of it this way, if you're looking at someone standing from a side view, it's kind of like one big snake. I will definitely attach an image in the show notes if you are a visual learner like me. The spine also has many different vertebral bodies as well, stacked up on top of each other. And there are 7 in the cervical region, 12 in the thoracic region, 5 in the lumbar region. There's 5 fused bones that make up the sacrum and 4 that make up the coccyx, or also known as the sacrococcygeal region. Now, our vertebrae also encases our spinal cord, which is a very important, thick bundle of nerves that runs from our brain all through the spine and helps us with any type of sensation or motor control and basically helps our muscles move. In between each vertebrae is a cushion gel-like structure known as a disc. We will refer to these as very important jelly donuts. So our jelly donuts will help us to absorb shock and move in different directions. However, over time, this disc space will more than likely decrease, leading to things like osteoarthritis or that bone-on-bone feeling. And when people experience lifting injuries or overuse or trauma to the spine in any way, the jelly of that donut will start to seep out, and that's when people experience things like sciatica, which is a very common pathology that I'm sure you've heard of, and it's definitely not a fun experience. So, like I said earlier, it is natural for our discs to shift and move, and we actually do need that movement to get good nutrition and blood flow to the discs. But when we are chronically lean forward all day, that jelly donut will start to slide backward and press on that spinal cord. Once that pressure becomes too much, that donut will start to leak and invade the spinal cord space. Now, the spinal cord is not a fan of sharing its space, so that's when that unbearable nerve pain occurs. So to recap, our spine is meant to handle all these different pressures and forces and loads and rotation, bending forward, bending backwards, but it becomes an issue when it's a chronic state. So when you're in a chronic position of forward bending all day, especially if you have a desk job, that's when it becomes a concern, and that's when the donut is not happy, and more than likely the jelly will start to seep out. So in class the other day, we briefly learned about 2 studies done, one in the 1960s by Nakmason and then another one done in 1999 by Wilk et al. Basically, the Wilk et al. Study is comparing the first study and using a pressure and transducer to test how different positions affect our disc pressure. Now, I definitely think this is something we should study more of because I couldn't find any other recent studies comparing this data. So if you do, send it my way, and I will also link the article below if you just so happen to want to read the whole thing. But essentially, there's an interesting image there that shows how standing leaning forward puts the most pressure on those discs versus standing in a normal erect posture. And sitting leaning forward, as you probably guessed it, puts more pressure on those discs compared to a normal sitting posture. And in the present study, it shows that sitting is about the same as standing pressure-wise on the discs. And then laying down on your side is less compared to standing. And then lastly, laying on your back is the least amount of pressure on your discs. And I wanted to highlight this study because I feel like the majority of us do sit a lot on a daily basis. So any chance we can get up, move around, touch our toes, it's going to be beneficial for us in the long run to avoid any chronic back injuries or pain that I'm sure most of us do experience. Now, what are some tips to become more aware of this? Well, ideally for sitting posture, we should be sitting in what we call an active erect or relaxed erect sitting position. This is where our feet are on the floor, our back is supported, and we are sitting nice and tall without slouching over. But let's be honest here, most of us are probably slouched right now as you're listening to this. But one of the main things I love to recommend or utilize is what we call a lumbar roll. You can also roll up towels if you don't want to buy one, but basically, you're going to put it in your chair along where your lower back is, and it should fit perfectly along that lordotic curve, like we discussed earlier, and it will literally make a huge difference and encourage that upright posture. It's such an easy fix to have in your chair, and I love to use it on long car rides, and my tailbone is usually way more happier. Now, if you want to get real fancy, there are chairs that have ones built in. So I would definitely check in with your job, especially if you have a desk job, on their ergonomic accommodations for things like chairs, keyboards, and standing desks, which I'm a huge fan of. I know one of my previous patients invested in a walking pad and would walk at a very slow pace while she checked her emails at her standing desk, so it's a great option if you do work from home. Another thing to consider is to make sure that your computer is at eye level, because sitting in that posture where your neck is either cranked looking up or looking down is just not a good combo. And then another tip I like to recommend is pretty basic, but set a timer on your phone to stand up every hour, touch your toes, stretch your chest in the doorway, do a quad stretch, anything to just kind of get your body moving. These can be gentle motions and doesn't have to be anything dramatic, just do it to your tolerance. Another thing I want you to think about is to just check in with your body and become more self aware. Think, am I comfortable right now, or is this just a habitual pattern of the way I like to sit or stand? A good way to check yourself is to squeeze your shoulder blades together, or what we call a scapular squeeze. Try to do about 20 of those every couple of hours, along with what we call a chin tuck, where you put your fingers on your chin and push your head back into neutral. I'll link a video or pictures for both of those so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. And lastly, for laying down or sleeping, I recommend putting a pillow in between your legs so your spine is in more of a neutral position, especially if you're a side sleeper. And preferably, when you do sleep on your back, it's best to not have a pillow that brings your head so far forward, because again, that's just going to put you in a chronic forward bend position. But I know sleeping habits are tough to modify. I suggest just checking in to see how you feel in the morning, and if you feel great, keep doing what you're doing, but if you don't, maybe it's time to make a small adjustment. Ultimately, we want to take care of our bodies now when it matters before we get into a state of chronic pain. And remember, motion is lotion. Our bodies love movement. Alright, well, that's all I have for now, and thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here. Tune in every Friday for new episodes. Feel free to message me in the meantime for any comments, questions, concerns, or feedback you may have, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.